and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. Wednesday was the deadline for the Mississippi House and Senate to act on general bills that originated in the other chamber. Bills that were amended and passed will return to their original chamber. Members could either accept the changes or send any bill into conference, where a select few from the House and Senate meet and iron out final details. Some lawmakers in the House are challenging the Senate's original version, that is, of a teacher pay raise. The House passed a version of Senate Bill 2770 that would increase pay by $2,000 a year over 2 years for a total of $4,000. The Senate originally passed a version that would increase pay by $500 a year over 2 years for a total of $1,000. Senator Gray Tollison of Oxford chairs the Education Committee. He tells At Issue producer Ashley Norwood that increasing teacher pay is a priority, but says the state has other commitments too.
We want to do everything we can to increase teacher pay. I think that's not only for the teachers that are in our classrooms today, but for future teachers that are in high school or in college seeking a teaching degree. I mean, we want to make sure they have a competitive salary, but also recognize we also have state employees working hard in Department of Human Services, Child Protective Services, universities, and so that's why we're down here, is to try to balance out the revenue that we have, and at the end of the session we have to make sure our budget is balanced. So
you mentioned revenue quickly. What is it looking like now?
Well, in this month we had an increase in our revenue above our estimate, which is encouraging, but we do have March, April, May, and June, so we have 3 more months. And we hope that trend will continue, but 1 month does not make a trend. But it's certainly a good positive trend, and hopefully we'll continue growing. Our revenues are growing in sales tax, in corporate tax is increasing, and our use tax, which is the tax that when you buy something from Amazon or something else, they're collecting the sales tax for that. So those areas are growing, which is an encouraging sign about the growth of our economy.
If the teacher pay raise bill passes with the amendment included, Tollison says it could cost the state at least $200 million over 2 years. Democratic Representative Steve Holland of Plantersville made the successful amendment to increase the Senate's teacher pay raise on the House floor this week.
Don't start on the low road, start on the high side. You can't negotiate from nothing. Negotiate from something with the Senate, and then provide the means to do it with, because we can do it if we want to. Now, I'm telling you, in my humble opinion, there's no group of people in this state more important than the professional educators that teach our children and our grandchildren. So bah humbug on $500 a year. You ought to be ashamed if you vote for it.
The bill is likely to go to conference. The School Safety Act is a measure that would require public schools to conduct active shooter drills in an effort to keep children safe. Another component would create a mental health education program to assess children in grades K through 5. Republican Senator Bryce Wiggins of Pascagoula presented the bill on the Senate floor this week. Lawmakers pushed him for more information about the mandatory active shooter drills and a school's mental health education curriculum.
Is there any evidence, Senator Wiggins, to support that what we're trying to achieve here will make our children more safe, or would it actually make them more fearful, more threatened?
Maybe a parent would not be comfortable with their pre-kindergartner or kindergartner being taught about mental illness, and this bill leaves it up to this School Office of Health to determine what appropriate grade levels are for teaching this. So why wouldn't we want to be able to let a parent opt out of this?
But I know we are lawmakers, but do the churches speak to this issue? Does the home speak to this issue? The school can't do it all. We can't correct problems that created in the homes.
Number one, we're forcing local districts to do this. Number two, we're telling them to teach something that we don't actually know what exactly they're going to be teaching. Are those two true statements?
The second one is not, because it has the objectives listed out in here and it defines what they have to figure out based on being age appropriate and all this. Also,
At a minimum.
Republican Senator Michael Watson of Pascagoula made an amendment to remove the mental health education component. He says the governor's office approves of the change. The House will now decide whether to accept the amendment and advance the bill to the governor's desk or take it up in conference. A criminal justice reform bill is still alive in the legislature. House Bill 1352 reduces barriers for people leaving the prison system and seeking employment. For example, it would stop automatic suspension of driver's licenses for non-payment of fines or for simple drug possession. Democratic Senator Juan Barnett of Heidelberg says the measure passed the Senate this week with a few amendments.
We expanded intervention courts, and what I mean by that is that we changed the name from drug courts to intervention courts so that we can service a whole lot more people, veterans, mental health, and just a wide array of people that this is going to be able to help since we're changing the name from drug courts to intervention courts. Also what this bill, what the amendment does is that it will no longer be suspending individuals' driver's license for simple drug offenses. Also, it expands the expungement eligibility, and one thing that I think is very important is that those people that have been convicted of nonviolent fine things like for drug offenses and stuff, these individuals now will be able to receive SNAP and TANF benefits. And I understand there's a lot, there's so many women that this affects. And these women have children. And by them having that lifetime ban that we were currently under, it just put them and the children in a bad situation. So this will allow those women who have been convicted that are no longer using drugs and are trying to work and do what's right, it will allow them now the ability to receive those funds so that they can also take care of their children at home.
A bill that's expected to become one of the strictest abortion laws in the nation is still alive. Senate Bill 2116 would make it illegal to obtain an abortion after a heartbeat is detected, as early as 6 weeks after conception. The bill would also penalize medical providers who perform the procedure with 6 months in jail, a $1,000 fine, or both. Republican Senator Angela Hill of Picayune talks with At Issue producer Ashley Norwood.
I think life comes from our Creator. I know it does. And we're endowed with these unalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And I don't think it's up to a human being to take another life, whether it's inside the womb or whether it's outside the womb. And how do you deny that it's a human being and that it's a life whenever it has a fetal heartbeat and has all the organs formed? I mean, science tells you that that's a human being.
You got some people that say, well, what if it's a child from rape or incest?
What did that child do to deserve to have its life ended? That child's innocent, regardless of the situation. And like I said, if it's rape or incest and a woman wants to terminate that pregnancy, we have emergency contraception that's on the shelf at Walmart and Walgreens. And there's also the option of going to the emergency room. We have a lot of options before we wait 8 weeks and that baby's developed. I think life is precious all the time. I think life begins earlier than a heartbeat. But if we can at least define that life begins at a heartbeat and we can't terminate that life, I think we have done something very positive as a society to say that that life matters.
Planned Parenthood and other abortion rights advocates rallied outside the Capitol this week against Senate Bill 2116. At Issue producer Ashley Norwood takes a look at what they are protesting and gets a response from legislators who support them.
Women vary and their health conditions vary also. So it could very well be a situation where a woman does not even know that she's pregnant that early in the pregnancy, and by just totally eliminating her opportunity to make a decision regarding her own health, I believe is a violation of her rights.
You talked a little bit about the cost that the state has to bear in the court system. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's my understanding it's an estimate of over $1 million. We're talking about legal fees. There's going to be the time required to work on the case, the expense of travel, depending on where the arguments are to be held. These are just, in my opinion, unnecessary expenses.
Women were having abortions long before Roe v. Wade, and they will continue to have abortions, whether we outlaw this procedure or not. The difference is that before Roe, in states that banned the procedure, women were receiving illegal, often unsafe abortions that could put their health, lives, and families in jeopardy. This bill would take Mississippi backwards, and our mothers, our sisters, our wives, and our friends would pay the ultimate price.
What we want as Mississippians is for legislators to stay out of our bodies, stay out of our medical decisions, and let families make the decisions that are best for them. That is all we are asking.
A bill that would speed up the process of evicting tenants who don't pay their rent is headed to the governor's office. The Landlord-Tenant Act would require renters to move immediately after a Mississippi judge issues an eviction order due to non-payment of rent. House Republican Brent Powell of Brandon tells MPB's Desiree Frazier why this is important.
There was a portion of the current law that allows a judge to extend the time a person can stay in the premises for up to 30 days. And so we took that away, allowing the landlord to take immediate possession of the property upon non-payment of rent and a judgment from that judge.
Why do that? You said they have up to 30 days, but now it'll be immediate instead?
They potentially have that, and the main reason is the way the laws are now. If you're late for your rent, you get a 3-day notice from your landowner or your landlord, okay? Now, after that 3 days have passed, that gives you a 3-day notice to pay the rent. After that 3 days has passed, then the landowner goes to court to get a court date to have the eviction happen. So that can take up to 30 days for even a court date. Now, once you get the court date and you get the judgment, at that point, you're probably 45 days past rent. If you hadn't made rent by then, you're probably not gonna make it. Personally, I have some tenants that have not paid for a couple of months. I get with them, we work out a plan, and we move on. And most of your landlords, I would venture to guess, do the same thing. The last thing you want is a vacant house. It's just sitting there, you're not making any money. But the really last thing you want is a deadbeat tenant who refuses to pay, and you're going back and forth to the courts, and then the 30 days, they give you a little bit where the court says, all right, they've given you some, you've accepted it, therefore they can stay, and this corrects that problem.
House Democrat David Beria of Bay St. Louis is concerned about how the Landlord-Tenant Act could affect low-income Mississippians. He offered an amendment that would require judges to give the renter 3 days to vacate, but that amendment failed on the House floor. Beria spoke with MPB's Desiree Frazier.
So there's no leeway. And that's what we were trying to do on the floor, is add a 3-day period to allow folks to get their belongings together and get out.
How serious do you think this is?
Well, it's only serious if you're a person who struggles to make ends meet, and you lose a job or you have an illness in your family, and for whatever reason you're unable to pay rent and you get behind and you have to go through one of these eviction processes, and then you find yourself on the date that the judge puts the gavel down and says you got to get out. You've got to get out at that moment, at that second, arguably. So there's not even a 2-hour, 4-hour, 1 day, 3-day period. You got to get out right away.
So let's get straight to the point now with views from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He is an attorney and is a former member of the House. Austin Barber is a Republican national strategist and founder of the Clearwater Group. Gentlemen, thank you. Welcome back to At Issue, as always. Brandon, let me start with you. Your impressions, concerns perhaps about what bills survived Wednesday's deadline?
Well, you saw two examples there of bills that I think are of extreme importance across the state. The teacher pay raise bill, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, it's on the minds of many people across the state. I think we all sort of recognize that you get what you pay for, and so we need to have competitive salaries for the folks who we place in a position to teach our children. And you also heard Senator Juan Barnett talk a little bit about a criminal justice omnibus reform bill. This really speaks to that issue of transitioning from prison back into society and having an opportunity to succeed from that course. And so I'm glad the legislature has spent time on that. And then, of course, Austin and I have gone back and forth all session long about whether or not the legislature should spend as much time as it has on immunity for property owners, immunity for church security guards who we don't even know of a case where they've been implicated in something. So you're always going to have a mixed bag at the end of the legislative season, but I will give them high marks for taking on those two issues that I mentioned, which I think are of very big importance across the state.
Your impression so far, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, I look at criminal justice reform as, you hate to say this is the most significant bill that will be passed or that has been passed during the legislative session, but I think this one could win the prize for most significant bill. One reason I say that is this is when good government is really working. They're bipartisan efforts. There are conversations, there are negotiations, there's work that's happening from the Republican side, the leadership side, and the Democrat side, the minority side. I mean, we saw Senator Juan Barnett, who's a Democrat senator from Jones County. Of course, Jason White, the Republican member of the House leadership, has been leading the charge on the House side. And of course, the governor has led the efforts from the very beginning on criminal justice reform from the bully pulpit. He talked extensively about it in his State of the State. He talked about it last year, and you know, worked with Lieutenant Governor Reeves and the Speaker and Republicans and Democrats in both bodies to go get this done. It's not done yet. I think it's clearly headed to conference, where most big bills usually end up, and I think we'll get something out of it. But Brandon sort of mentioned this. I look at this as so important because we know that most nonviolent offenders, and that's what this bill is about, nonviolent offenders, they're eventually going to get out of prison, okay? And what we should want as good government and as a good society is for them to become a better part of society versus really having no good options and then turning around and getting right back into prison. So I think this is common sense, good government that will end up in conference, and I hope be on the way to the governor towards the tail end of the session for his signature and to become law.
Let's talk about the School Safety Act. Austin, there was a good bit of conversation. We heard a little bit of it there over the mental health component of that bill.
Yeah, and you know, Senator Wiggins has really worked very diligently on this bill in the Senate. Senator Bryce Wiggins, who's a state senator, of course, from Jackson County. Look, I've described this bill, Brandon, in the past. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. You know, we need to find ways to overcome what is sadly a reality in our world today, which is we've got, you know, people who with mental issues, the vast majority of them are going and having these mass shootings. And so that's obviously, you know, what they're working on. I don't know as much about the issue that Senators Hill and Watson were talking about, but I like this bill so much because, you know, one of the big things that it does is it has our State Department of Homeland Security will bring in professionals to every single school district, and they're going to do an assessment, whether it's in, you know, Harrison County or Holmes County, for every school, and say, let's make sure you're prepared. Let's make sure that you've got, you know, the right setup so that you are best prepared to handle a situation in case you have an active shooter. And if you're not, let's get it done before school starts. And then one other thing that I love about this bill is it has, in the first 60 days of each semester, every school has to have an active shooter drill. We do fire drills, we do tornado drills. It's a sad reality that we have to do this, but I think it's the smart thing.
I hope that this is the only time we have to talk about this issue is in the theoretical sense. The issues across the country have been devastating. It's torn communities apart. We saw a coach down in Florida retire this week, a year after the shooting down there because of the psychological impact. I think one of the things that this bill did when it left the House was it acknowledged the mental health impact and the mental health evaluation services that could be helpful in these situations. So I think the Senate made a big mistake by stripping that language out. I hope that House conferees will hold steady and get that language back in, because I think it's short-sighted to assume that preparedness of this kind shouldn't go hand in hand with mental health evaluations. And just to have services available for children who might not be at risk on their own, but to make sure they're getting the services they need when tragedy strikes or when other issues come into their lives. And so, you know, in Mississippi, we've all seen what it looks like to have undiagnosed and untreated mental health problems. That's had an impact on criminal justice and so many other issues. I think we need to start making sure that we consider mental health in all of these big initiatives. And so I think as we move forward and look ahead, I hope the House is able to, urge the Senate to take that language and put it back in.
Yeah, and you know, for the viewers at home, what will happen is this bill will go back to the House. The House members will have to either concur with the Senate changes or invite conference. And I think what Brandon thinks is going to happen, and I agree, probably headed a conference.
Regarding the active shooter training, what about folks who argue that if you had stronger gun control laws, you wouldn't need to have active shooter training? Is this a way to get around gun control laws?
I don't think so, and I would disagree with those people who say that because, you know, I'm a firm believer, particularly in our country, the folks that want to do you harm, they're going to find a way to get the tools, whether it's a gun or a bomb or a knife or whatever it is, to go do you harm. And, you know, schools, districts have two big jobs. One is to educate our children to the best of their ability, and the second is to take care of those kids and protect those kids while they're there at school. And if this further helps them with that second job, really they're parallel jobs, then I'm all for it. But I think that's a good question, though.
You know, National Rifle Association essentially runs legislatures across the country, and Mississippi is one that they have sway over. And so you don't have, in some conversations when we talk about policy, all options are truly not on the table. And so I think, Wilson, to your point, this is just, Mississippi is one of those states that's not having that discussion right now. So in the absence of that, I think you look for other alternatives. You know, there was another issue that was brought up both in the House committee and in the Senate committee by a Republican in the House committee and by a Democrat in the Senate committee, where they asked, are we concerned at all about the exposure of children to these types of drills when, in fact, they might not be thinking about this? Does this introduce a concept that might not be on their minds? And I know there was some effort on both sides to maybe make this training strictly for teachers and for administrators. That seems to have lost. That seems to have lost out in both the House and the Senate. So wanted to mention that, though, because that did get some discussion in both committees.
And I can understand that, and I wouldn't be against just training teachers and administrators and coaches because they're the most important people in terms of implementing a situation like this. I don't know how you do that. Maybe you do it, you know, on a day where they're up there for, you know, practice test or something that they don't have the kids up there. But again, it's a step in the right direction. It's not perfect, but I'm glad that this conversation, debate's happening, and I hope they get something done.
On the subject of teachers, we talked about the earlier in the program, the teacher pay raise and the change that came from sort of a surprise on the floor there from Steve Holland to quadruple what is being offered these teachers from $1,000 to $4,000. It was a surprise, was it not?
We sometimes have moments where we're examining kind of the bungling nature of the legislative process, and you see some folks who clearly are kind of doing things on the fly, might not fully appreciate the process. Steve Holland is not one of those people. Steve Holland is a master at the legislative process. And you saw a minute ago what an effective communicator that he is. But he also said something that is exactly right. The Senate came out with a very low ball teacher pay raise. I mean, let's face it. All that they succeeded in doing was making teachers angry. And so what Holland says is if you really want to pass something that's going to matter, let's go a little bit higher. Let's start there as a negotiation point and see if we can't do better by our teachers. He's exactly right, and clearly he read the room correctly because there were a lot of folks who voted for that amendment that didn't know they'd be voting for an amendment that day. And so as we move forward, I think it's going to be very hard for legislators not to really up the ante over what the Senate did. And he made another point too. He said, let's not just say an amount, let's show how we would fund it. And so John Reed and members of the House, they do feel strongly, Austin, that you could do a robust teacher pay raise that was paid for, that leaves you with a balanced budget. And they also think you could do a little bit better for state employees. The Senate doesn't seem to be there with them, and Gray made some points about how we're still waiting for the budget to come out. But as we identify some potential places where they're going to do battle in the days ahead, the House seems to feel like they can do more than the Senate seems to feel like, and that'll be one of the dividing lines.
Well, this is where I can agree with Steve Holland, because I heard him and I made this note where he said educators are one of the most important groups in the state. They are. There's no question about that. I always say my mother was a school teacher and was always vastly underpaid. I agree with him. Republicans agree with him. Tate Reeves, our lieutenant governor, said months ago, proposed a teacher pay raise. The governor supported it. Republicans supported it. I can promise you a teacher pay raise will get done this year. There's no way that Republicans are not going to deliver a teacher pay raise. And I should note, this will be the second teacher pay raise that's been done under Republican, this last 8 years, where you've had Philip Gunn as the Speaker, Tate Reeves as the Lieutenant Governor, and of course Phil Bryant as our Governor. This will be the second pay raise that's been done. Republicans also pays a merit-based teacher pay raise, which there are, and I don't know how many or what percentage of teachers across the state get this. It's up to $2,000 a year for some number of teachers. Teachers also receive the step increase, which is a $500 per year increase for all teachers. But again, I can say this, teachers need to get paid more. They're going to get paid more when this legislature is done. This will end up in conference, most likely. They will work out something that's positive for teachers. And as you said, Gray Tollison and the rest of the leadership is continuing to see revenue numbers, to see how much money is available, to see what they can do for teachers.
Well, it will go to conference. We know that because
Yes.
it contains a reverse repealer, which is one of those technical things that just ensures conference. But, you know, Austin, it's all kind of deck chairs on the Titanic until you get that bottom line number up as high as your neighbors.
Totally agree.
And that's what teachers look at. If we're not paying more than Alabama and Louisiana, they ain't coming here.
Teachers and we will be watching. Thank you, gentlemen. We're out of time. You can watch this program on our website, mpbonline.org/issue. And we invite you to tune in on At Issue on the radio, MPB Think Radio, Monday mornings at 9. Thank you for joining us on the television. Good night.